Wasn't because I didn't work hard. Wasn't because I didn't have the talent. It's because I didn't have the blueprint so that I knew what to do every day and I didn't know the areas of my strengths and weaknesses. Hey everybody, welcome to part 2 of this 3-part masterclass. Hopefully got a lot of value out of the first lesson, which is all around helping you understand your current state in all areas of your life. If you haven't watched it yet, definitely go back and watch that. It'll really help you create an effective blueprint towards making the most of your life. But today, it's all around helping you get clarity on your action plan to get to quota. Now, my first job out of college, I bombed miserably. I closed 0 deals and made $0 in commission my first year in sales. True story. Wasn't because I didn't work hard. Wasn't because I didn't have the talent. It's because I didn't have the blueprint so that I knew what to do every day and I didn't know the areas of my strengths and weaknesses. So what I'm going to walk you through is an exercise that you should do every year when you get your quota. And even if it's mid-year or in middle of the quarter, if you've never done this before, this will be really, really powerful because it's going to help you lower your stress, lower your anxiety, and know what you need to do every single day to be successful. So let's jump right into it. Now, I encourage you, take notes as you're going through this because you're going to learn this, and then afterwards, this only becomes effective if you do this for your business. And the beauty of this is a framework that you can apply for not only your role now, but even 10 years from now. If you aspire to be in leadership and run teams, you can build models off of this same framework. So let's get right in. Let's follow along with the example. Then we'll do some math. So there's a 3-part process that I'm going to walk you through called PCV. P stands for process. C stands for conversion. V stands for velocity. So your process is what are the stages and steps in your sales process that someone has to go through in order to become a customer, cradle to grave. Conversion is understanding that sales is a funnel. Not everyone goes through it 100%. So it's on knowing how to effectively know your conversion rates and model against it so that you can set yourself up on the right path every day. And last but not least is velocity. Now, velocity is where a lot of people screw up their planning because a lot of people do a pretty good job of doing process and conversion when they do planning for their action plans. But I've seen many reps miss their goal on a big amount because they didn't build in the velocity part. So make sure you're doing that as well. So I'll walk you through that. And if you do these 3 things, this is what's going to help you get to quota. Because the harsh truth is 3 out of 4 sales reps are missing quota right now. And I don't want you to be a part of that. But if you're watching this, something tells me you're not just trying to get to quota. You're trying to get to the top 1%. You're trying to get to President's Club. You're trying to make the most of life, live life on your terms. And you're not going to do that by just getting to your goal. You're going to do that by crushing it. And that's where the bonus parts come in. So make sure, stay to the end, because I'm going to walk you through is what are the things that you need to make sure that are in your plan to get you to club. So think of PCV get you to a quota. The bonus questions get you to club. So let's dig in. And what we're going to do is we're going to do an example process. I encourage you to take notes, have your calculator along. I bet you didn't think you're going to be doing math today, but this is how you're going to get the most of it. So here we go. So what we're going to do is walk through a basic sales process. Now, I say this is basic because every business can be a little different. The way you run a sales process for new business might be different from upsells. An add-on deal versus a digital transformation. Those are all different types of sales process that you can run. So we're going to show you a pretty standard one for the nature of this exercise. So the first question I have for you, say it out loud to yourself. No worries, no one's listening. What is the first thing that needs to happen in order for a sale to happen? You need to pick up the phone. Nothing happens if you don't pick up the phone. So that's number 1. What's the second thing that needs to happen for a deal to happen? Shout it out to yourself or throw it in the comments if you want. Someone needs to answer the phone. I got to call you. I got to interrupt your day. And then you have to pick up the phone. You have to get the person you're trying to reach. And then what's the goal of that? You interrupt their day. You try to position some value, come in with an effective customer story. But the end goal of that and the next step in the selling process is to get them to say, yes, I'll give you time. In other words, they're going to agree to booking a meeting. So in this instance, it's meetings booked. So we're going to put MB for meetings booked here. After they book a meeting, what needs to happen for you to close the deal? They got to show up. People don't always show up for meetings, and people skip this step. So you got to make sure they show up and you hold the meeting. So for nature of this exercise, we're going to call that meetings held, or MH. Now, what happens when you have that first meeting with them? You're trying to qualify them. You're doing discovery. You're learning about what they care about. You're painting a picture around how your solution could potentially help them. And what's the end goal of that meeting? That, it's two things are happening. One, they think it's a good use of their time to evaluate your solution. And two, it's a good use of your time for you to evaluate, for you to pursue this evaluation with them, because their time is no more valuable than yours. So that's the end goal here, is that intro call or intro meeting, however you want to call it, it turns into a qualified opportunity. Or some companies say, you submit the opportunity into your pipeline, however you want to use it. But for the nature of this exercise, we're calling it a qualified opportunity. And then what happens when you have a qualified op? You run at it. Again, every type of deal can be very different in terms of how you pursue it, but the end goal is the same for everybody. And that's to win it, trying to win the deal. So step one is got to pick up the phone. They have to answer. They have to agree to a meeting. They have to show up to a meeting. We have to both agree that this is worth evaluating. And then they got to sign on the dotted line and become a customer. So that's a standard sales process. Now, what I'm going to walk you through is the first step for getting clarity is understanding, well, how much do I have to do to get a deal across the finish line? What does it take to win one deal? And that's what I'm going to show you next. So this is where your calculator comes in. But before I get to the calculator, I'm going to show you the conversion rates to help build that. So for the nature of this exercise is we're going to say not everyone answers when you call them. So 1 out of 10 people answer when I call them. So my call to connect rate is 10%. So 1 out of 10 calls that I make, they answer. Okay. Now of the conversations that I have, not everyone's going to say yes to a meeting, of course. So my connect or conversation to meetings booked rate for them to say, yes, I'm going to do a meeting with you is 25%. So 1 in 4 people that I talk to say, yes, I'm going to do a meeting with you. Now, not everyone's going to show up to the meeting. Disclaimer, this is a big thing that a lot of reps don't build into their plans. They assume because they book, if their KPI is 3 meetings a week, they say, okay, great, all I need to do is book 3 meetings. No, because not everyone's going to show up. You got to book more than 3 because you have to build in that leakage in your funnel. So for this instance, 3 out of 4 people that I book meetings with show up to the meeting. So that means your meetings booked to meetings held rate is 75%. Now, for you running that intro call, that first meeting that you have with them, again, the goal is to turn into a qualified opportunity. So for this exercise, your meetings held to qualified opportunity rate, conversion rate, is 50%. So for every 10 meetings that you have, 5 of them turn into qualified opportunities that you want to pursue. And then of the qualified opportunities you pursue, you win half of them, so 50%. So 1 in 10 people I call answers. 1 in 4 people that I speak to says yes to a meeting. Of the people that say yes to a meeting, 3 out of 4 of them show up. Of the people that show up to a meeting, half of them turn into qualified opportunities. Then half my qualified opportunities turn into 1 deals. So how many calls does it take to win 1 deal? So here's where the math comes in. So bust out your calculator. For this exercise, we're going to do 1,000 calls. So let's say make 1,000 calls. Now that's your raw input. Now we need to know how many conversations does 1,000 calls equal? Well, so what you do in your calculator is you multiply 1,000 times 10%, otherwise known as 0.1. So what you're going to get here is if you make 1,000 dials, you're going to have 100 conversations. So $1,000 gets you 100 conversations. Now, how many meetings are you going to book off of 100 conversations? So you're going to enter in your calculator 100 times 25%, because 1 in 4 people that I speak to say, yes, I'll take a meeting. So you're going to multiply 100 times 0.25 in your calculator. And what's that going to give you? 25. 25 meetings are going to get set on the calendar. 25 meetings are going to be booked. Now, of the meetings booked, not everyone's going to show up, right? This is where you got to be careful. So what we want to know is, well, how many meetings are going to be held if 3 out of 4 of them show up? Now, do the math. So 25 times 0.75, what does that get you? If you do the calculations right, it probably gets you 18.8. Now, the question for you is, well, do you put 18.8? Do you put 19? What do you put? Because 5 to 9 round up. We know that math rule. But here's the thing. Math rules don't apply when it comes to calculating your quota. What matters is building in an airtight plan. So there's no such thing as 0.8 of a person showing up to a meeting. So even if that number is 18.9999999, still not 19. So we always round down. So in this instance, 25 meetings booked result and do 18 meetings held. Always round down. Be conservative. Now, of the meetings held, 50% of them turn into qualified opportunities. So what's half of 18? Multiply 18 by 0.5, you get 9. So you get 9 qualified opportunities. So multiply this by 50% again, because you win half the deals you pursue. And what does that get you? And remember, can't have half a deal won, right? So if you're thinking it's 4.5, you're wrong. The answer is 4. You got to round down. There's been a lot of deals that they started to fill out the DocuSign, but that doesn't matter. You can only win full deals. So let's recap. If I make 1,000 dials, I have 100 conversations. I have 25 meetings that get booked. 18 meetings show up. Turns into 9 qualified opportunities. And I win 4 deals. Another way to put it is, if I make 1,000 calls, I win 4 deals. So what does that give me? It gives me 250 calls per 1 deal. So think about the clarity that gives you as a rep. So in this situation, you're like, oh, I got to win all these deals. It provides you a lot of clarity, and it's very empowering for you to know, okay, I got to make $250. To make $250, I should get to my quota, or I should win a deal. Now that we have covered process and we cover conversion, now we need to build in velocity, because we went top down with the funnel. We're going to build in your velocity, so then you can go bottom up the funnel to build an airtight plan so you know what to do every single day. So what we're going to do next is outline a couple baseline metrics. So think about what the velocity is how fast does something move through your funnel, through the processes. Now, there's a lot of metrics that go into velocity that companies measure, but we're just going to show a couple basic ones. So for this scenario, first one we're going to do is average deal size. So think about your average deal size is what's the average revenue, first year revenue, because we're going off of annual quota. So this, you might reference this as ACV, ARR. ACV is annual contract value. ARR is annual recurring revenue. But think of it as like average deal size. What's the amount of revenue we're going to get the first year on average for our 1 deal? So in this example, that number is 50K. So your average 1 deal size is $50,000. Now, my quota in this scenario is $1 million, which is a standard quota in software sales, B2B, but obviously some be higher, some be lower. But for this example, we're going to use $1 million. So let me ask you, if my quota is $1 million and my average deal size is $50,000, what does that tell you in terms of how many deals we need to win? Right? The answer is 20. So if you divide 1 million by 50,000, that gets you 21 deals. So we're getting a lot of clarity here. So the first metric, average deal size, that goes into velocity. That tells you a lot about creating your action plan. The next thing is your cycle length. So cycle length, how long something takes to go from start to finish. Now here's where a lot of companies can screw this up. When they think about cycle length, they often think about it, they started here. We booked a meeting, so that's when the cycle really starts. Another way they look at it is, well, when the opportunity is created in your CRM, right? They start measuring the time. But, it might take you 2 months to get that person on the line. So you want to take that in consideration and really understand what your real cycle length is. Because that cycle length starts the first day you pick up the phone. Now, for this exercise, the cycle length is 3 months. So it takes you 3 months on average to win a deal. So if my cycle length is 3 months, what does that tell you about your pipeline? What that tells you is you got to have your pipeline pretty much baked and filled by the end of Q3. Because if it takes you 3 months to win a deal and your fiscal year ends on December 31st, it doesn't do you any good to start creating deals after Thanksgiving because you just won't have time to run at them. I can encourage you to continue to do that because that builds your pipeline for 2024, but it's not going to help you this year. So it's important that you know that when you're building your plan. Remember when I said earlier, a lot of reps screw up because they don't build in velocity because they'll do everything right to build their action plan. And they'll say, well, I'm doing all this stuff. I know how many calls I need to make. And I ask a simple question. I say, well, what time frame do you need to make them by? And then the whole plan falls apart because they miss an important metric here, which is your cycle length. So now that we know velocity, conversion, process, let's do a bottom-up funnel so that you can know exactly what you need to do every single day to be successful. So first thing we're going at is we're going to work against your quota. So in your quota here, $1 million, keeping the same example. Now, what's the first step in getting a quota? You got to win deals. And you already know from this here, we have to win 20 deals to get to our quota. So one deal equals 20. So 20 deals at $50,000 get us to quota. Now what we're going to do is work backwards from there. And as you're working down the funnel, from this one, you're multiplying by the conversion rates. But now that you're working up the funnel, you're going to divide by those conversion rates. So this is where the math comes into play. If you have to win 20 deals and you win 50% of the deals that you work of your qualified opportunities, how many qualified opportunities do you need? 40. You double it. So what's the next step from qualified opportunities? We have to have those intro calls, those meetings held. And if 50% of our meetings held turn into qualified opportunities, how many meetings do we need to have 40 qualified ops? The answer is 80. You divide it by 0.5. Whatever the number is above, you divide it by 0.5. The conversion rates are working up. So what happens before a meeting's held? Meeting's booked. Because you book the meeting and then they show up. So how many meetings do we need to book if we need to have 80 meetings? So we're going to divide 80 by 0.75. So let's do the math. What's the number that you're getting? You're probably getting 106.7. So let's think about this. What did we learn about before? Math, rules of math can go out the window when you're building quota plans. So 106.7. What are we doing here? You might be thinking, well, we're going to round down because that's what we did before. But remember, we just flipped the funnel the other way. So now we round up because we always want to have extra meetings booked. So that falls down to the more conservative number, if that makes sense. So if it's 106.7, you're going to round up to 107. So 107 meetings booked get you 80 meetings held, 40 qualified ops, and 21 deals. But we're not done. I need to have a bunch of conversations to book 107 meetings. So there's a 25% conversion rate from my conversations to meetings booked. So you divide 107 by 25%. So in this case, or you just multiply it by 4, and that gets you 428. So you have to have 428 conversations to book 107 meetings. And then you have a 10% call to connect rate. So you just multiply your 428 by 10. That gets you 4,280 calls. So you got to make 4,280 calls to have 428 conversations, to book 107 meetings, to have 80 meetings that turns into 40 qualified ops to win 20 deals. That provides you a lot of clarity of what you need to do. But this still seems like a lot, so we need to break this down further, because this doesn't tell me what I need to do every day. And that's what we're doing next. So remember, we're going to break this down to what you need to do every single day. Now, what you want to remember is this is where the cycle length comes in, because we don't have 12 months to make these dials. We have 9 months for this year. So what you want to think about is, all right, we have 9 months. Another way to think about 9 months is 36 weeks, 5 days a week, 180 days. So you have 180 days to make 4,280 calls. So let's break this down. 4,280 calls divided by 180 days. And what does that get us in terms of calls per day? Do the math. Probably getting 23.8. So what are we doing? We rounding down, we rounding up. Put in the comments real quick. You think we're rounding up or rounding down? I want to know your answer. All right. So we're rounding up. Answer 24. 24 calls per day. Now let me ask you a question. I want you to think about this from pure stress, anxiety, from that lens. What sounds easier to you? Hey, you need to close $1 million in revenue for us this year, or you need to make 24 calls a day? This is what I mean in terms of having an action plan provides clarity so you can reduce your stress and anxiety. Because no matter what, you got to understand the numbers of your business and have a clear action plan every day. So this provided you a lot of clarity, hopefully, to help you build a plan to get to quota. And you should definitely do this for your business after you're done here, so that you can build your plan if you've never done it before. Or maybe you've built a plan and there's maybe a component or two of that you might have learned from this. Or maybe you're doing this already, and if that's the case, kudos to you. You're ahead of the game, right? And now you should just be even more confident that you're doing the right thing, so it lowers your stress even more. But remember what I said in the beginning. This helps you get to club, or this helps you get to quota. Now let's help you get to club. So that's where the 3 bonus tips come in to make sure that you set yourself up for success. And number 1 is know your numbers and be conservative with your numbers. Here's what I mean by this. Your numbers is not your business's numbers. Your numbers are your numbers. Because the business might have an average win rate of 50% on qualified ops, but yours might be 40, or yours might be 60. You have to know your individual numbers for this to work. And if you're new to a business, or the data might be fuzzy, or you might be able to only get the business's numbers, my advice to you is go extremely conservative. Because that's where reps screw up. They get optimistic with their plans, and they set themselves up for failure. You hope for the best and always plan for the worst. And I'll give you a quick example of how one metric being off can ruin everything. So for this exercise, let's say you're a rep and you're struggling to get the right contact information. So when you're making your dials, you're not connecting with as many decision makers as your peers are. You're just as good at booking meetings, closing deals, all of that stuff, but you're just struggling to get the decision makers on the phone, which happens. So let's say in this example, instead of having a 10% connect rate, your connect rate's only 5%. If everything else is the same, what does that do? That cuts your pipeline in half, and you close half the deals, which is a big difference off of only one metric being off. That's why it's so important to know your numbers and be conservative with your numbers. So that's the number one bonus tip. Number two, revisit your numbers. Might sound a little redundant, but your numbers are going to change for a couple reasons. One, you're going to get better. Hopefully, people have bad quarters, bad months, but if you continue to invest in yourself and continue to grow, your conversion rates are going to improve. So you want to know what your numbers are and as they evolve. Another thing to know is, most people sell in a seasonal business, right? Your product, how customers look at your product and solution in Q4 might be very different than Q2. And that might be not only from the customer's perspective, but think about how your company operates, their operating rhythm. They may push really hard and provide additional incentives to help you win more customers in Q4 versus Q3. Right? Those things can affect the cycles. So a best practice I recommend here, if you really want to go to club year after year, is you revisit this once a quarter so you can really objectively assess where you're at. And the third and most important tip that I have for you, at 25%. Whatever this number is, this calls per day, add 25% to it. So instead of 24, we're doing 30 plus. And here's why. And I'll tell you a story of how I stumbled into this. When I joined Salesforce as an SDR, I had massive imposter syndrome. I had no idea what I was doing. And I knew it was only a matter of time before they figured me out, because the job that I just left, I didn't do very well. So my confidence wasn't great in my selling ability. So what I did was, when I joined the company, I just asked, well, how many calls do I need to make to be successful? And the answer they told me is, if you make 50 calls a day, you'll be successful. Well, I said, okay, well, 50 calls a day works for the person who comes from a great background, has a great sales foundation, is super intelligent, doesn't have a super raspy voice and might scare people away when you speak to them. I don't have any of those things, right? All those things are things that I struggle with. So I can't do what everyone else is going to do. I have to do more. So what I did is I set a personal goal for myself to make 70 calls a day, because I was just trying to be just as good as everyone else. But what I didn't even realize that I was doing is, by me just having more activity, not only did it help me level the playing field, but here's the genius part. All of my conversion rates improved faster than everyone else. Because think about how you improve. It's repetition. If you're having 5 conversations a day and I'm having 8 or 9 or 10, that's more at-bats for me to practice my pitch. That's more at-bats for me to practice my discovery. If I'm having more disco calls than you, if I'm building more business cases, I just get better at all of those skills because I have more at-bats. So what I did was, I got level with everyone else because I had more activity, and I kept that same level of activity, and then my conversion rates kept improving, and then I got better than everyone else. Then they started feeding each other. So then I became the number one SDR in the company my first year. So I went from having zero self-confidence in my selling ability to literally being named the best SDR in the company in under a year. And it was simply because of using this formula. So I hope this was helpful for you. This had a massive impact in my career, and hopefully it can do the same for you. I've taught this to hundreds of reps, and it's helped every single one of them that implemented it, because this is a framework that you can use over and over again. And as you'll see, once you grasp a framework, it's not super complicated. It's not rocket science, but it's not easy. It's not easy to stick to a plan every day, right? And that's where the discipline comes in. So, question that I have for you before you hang up this video is, I'd love to get your candid feedback. Throw it in the comments. A scale of 1 out of 10. A 1, I need to stop making videos, quit my day job, and do something else. 10 being, this is extremely valuable for you. Helped you provide a lot of clarity. So if you could do that, that'd be a huge favor to me, to help me know how helpful this was for you going forward. So thank you for this lesson, and looking forward to having you in the next lesson, where we're going to help you understand how to take the first step towards mastering your career, which is helping you find your dream job. Thank you so much for tuning in.